seen to be just at a phenomenal clip in terms of change. And what we're talking about in terms of salaries and challenges, sort of when we got to about 2003 or so, trying to get developers was just about impossible. So it was good fun. So this is what the startup community looked like. This is the Perth startup community, all of it, on the 4th of July 2000. We call this event Independence from America Day. But the idea is that we're really trying to get startups to actually go and flourish in Perth. And at that stage, there really wasn't anything that was going on for startup founders in Perth. And we would have people that would come to this, and it was like we were the only people that understood them, right? In terms of what was going on and what have you. And people would turn up with their business plans, good old-fashioned business plans, Spirex, kind of bound plastic plan with a clear sheet. And you'd have somebody nervous with a tie standing in the corner and refuse to show it to anybody. You had all the advisors that were leaning, talking to each other, bullshitting to each other about how busy they were, and you had one venture capitalist who was leaning on the bar like he was the only person waiting to get picked up. And it was quite unusual sort of scenario because you had these three groups independently nervous about talking to each other. And my job as MC and chair of that, I felt, was to get everything going, get some good people like what you guys are doing, get some good people together and drag somebody across to somebody else. And I found it so frustrating because I introduced a founder to VC, and went, you need money, you're interested in investing. And then I came back and said, how did that go? Oh yeah, not really. What? So I pull them together again and go, right, this is what he's got, this is what you've got, you should be doing a little good, you're all good now, and then leave. And there was just that constant work to get that community going and thriving, that over a period of time we started to get something going so that people would come in and share. Now what's happened in that time since is the Perth ecosystem looks nothing like what it did back then. And I love what the guys here at Morning Startup have done. The amount of effort that they put in to help drive and grow the community is unbelievable. I first started working out of here in about 2012. I mean, it was like really early. So back then when it was just petitioned off at the wall, and we did a startup called Present while I was here, which was a whole interesting journey in itself. Enough about me. So this is what I want to work with you today and talk through with you. I want to make sure that at the end of this, it was worthwhile getting up in the cold and getting down here. I want to talk about scaling up, boosting business value with some insights around that. I want to look at where your profitable growth is going to come from over the next 12 months. Look about delegation skills as a leader. You might not have a team, but at some point you will if you're going to scale up. That's important to think about what you're doing. Some areas to look at: accelerating your ability to scale up, how to become number one in your market, and think about the next 90 days. And what I want you to do is I want you to find a buddy that you're going to go and have coffee with after and think about some of the things I'm going to talk to you about today and work on those for 15, 20 minutes. This is a condensed half-day workshop. And what I don't have is the time to be able to facilitate all the exercise with. So you've got to go find somebody, so look around and pick somebody now that you're going to go and spend some time with in terms of coffee. Right, challenges. What challenges have you got? I need you to talk, get your gobs moving, come on. What challenges have you got in business? Resourcing, yeah. What have you got? Nothing.
Probably just duplicating yourself.
Yeah, right. So I haven't got a claim machine for that. Yeah, what about you?
Yeah, it's probably that HR side of it, going from how we scale up the employees prior to liberating the company.
Yeah, right. Yeah, what about you?
Probably, finding people.
Yeah, people's a real challenge.
Working on the business, not in the business, which is...
Yeah. So the good old Michael Gerber E-Myth stuff, like that's old, but it's still classic and good. Anybody else? Yeah.
Re-engineering the onboarding process to take out manual actions.
Yeah, fantastic. It was one of the things when we were doing Present that I felt we never quite nailed in the way that I would have loved, was getting that onboarding process just right, getting that magical first user experience, which is after you've sort of invested $500,000 in it. You want to try and get that stuff fixed early. Right? Anybody else got anything else they want to chuck in? Everybody's going swimmingly then? All good?
Scaling a new product.
Scaling a new product. Right. So, if I look at why now is a really good time to thrive, we've got low interest rates. much higher household savings. If we think about the external environment that we're in, we've got unsettled customers that are looking for better solutions. You know, one of the things that's been interesting about COVID is we've got much more internet time to think and look and research and do all of those sorts of things. We've got unsettled team members that are looking for better businesses to join. So that's interesting. That means that you can potentially grab talent from other places and bring them in, but you've got to think much more about how you secure and keep talent in your organisation. There's much higher technology adoption in the market, and this evolving customer demand creates new opportunities. So I just want to play a video. What I'd like you to do, this runs for about 3 minutes or so, and this is all about marketing and growth, and this guy took a business that was turning 100 million to $1 billion in turnover. You'll love all of this because it's all great marketing stuff, and you'll find it interesting. But if you can just think about some ideas, so I'm going to ask you some questions at the end. So I want you to take note of what it is that he's talking about and think about how you might be able to apply that, because I'm going to ask you some questions. Hopefully we get some sound. Go. You had sound before?
We had sound?
You had sound?
How'd you get sound?
I don't know. It was Magic Dave.
That was me.
There's something down there.
Have you tried turning it off and on again?
It wasn't from before.
Art.
It's not getting going. I think a lot of people more.
Your expertise, as you say, is finding hidden profits to scale a company. So for those of us that aren't traditional marketers, where do we start?
It's not getting going. I think a lot of people worry about having so many things in place, like everything perfect, the branding, logo, all those things, but ultimately it's about testing. Whatever it is, you got to get out there. You can do months and months of research and then get out in the market and they just don't like it. And so as quickly as possible, get a representative read of whatever it is you're talking about. Seth Godin talks about like shipping early, and if you're super proud of it, you've launched way too late. The idea is not necessarily going to the whole world, but can you test, can you get a bit of feedback, and then you go from there.
Your approach to helping clients scale their businesses is, of course, grounded in 3 pillars. And the first one is customer lifetime value. In the simplest terms, talk to us about what that means to you and why this is so important.
At the end of the day, you need to know how much customers are worth, both revenues and margin, which depending on the business model, those can be very different things. And so understanding how much you're going to generate from a customer over what period of time, understanding how much you're going to make from them before you actually even try to acquire them, and that helps to inform how you think about going out and acquiring a customer. So if a customer's worth $100 in their lifetime, and you make 10% on that, then you got to go acquire them for a certain amount. You got to have some money left over to run the business and the profit, right? Because once you get going too, it's not just about increased revenue, it's about improve your cost structure and how do you make things better on that side. So it's not understanding the levers in the business, which is just as important as it is to understand how you think about acquiring customers.
The second pillar to ensure your company is built to scale, you say, is a strong focus on brand. Why is that so vital?
I come from a performance marketing direct response world where the concept of brand wasn't nearly as prominent. It was much more about drive, churn and burn, get the customer, maximize however much you can, and then on to the next one. I think in this day and age, also that model is much more difficult. There's just so much more information for consumers to actually research. And so whether they go to Amazon, they go to Google, they go to your Facebook page, customers are going to be doing a lot more research than they did previously. So I think A, you have to do it no matter what you think your model is. And second of all, for me, brand is about customer experience. And ultimately, if you're going to build something scalable and sustainable, you have to have a good customer experience. I think if you build a business with brand in mind, you're actually building a much stronger business because you're thinking about the experience.
Now, the third pillar you talk about is operational excellence. Obviously, this is extremely important, but it takes a lot of work. So how do you convince a leader to stop working in the business and start working on the business?
That's a good one, because ultimately a big part of operational excellence is enhancing the team. When you want to build something that's sustainable and scalable, whether that's 7-figure business or 9-figure or beyond, you're going to have some sort of a machine, and that machine is going to have to operate. And if it's always operating just because of one person, then your chances of success are generally lower. It's a tough conversation sometimes to say, look, you're going to take some money from the bottom line because you want to go invest. And so whether that's in people, in software, in vendors, if you actually want to build something, it's an investment, right? And I think sometimes when you make an investment, it's scary and there's a risk, but ultimately, if you want some sort of scale, you're going to have a machine.
Right, so what were the 3 things?
Operational excellence, build
customer lifetime value. So customer lifetime value. Who knows what the lifetime value of their customers in their business? Yeah, what is it?
It's a lot. I don't know if I want to share it.
Very cool. I had the privilege of sharing office with Pam when we first started up, and I used to go in the tech hub, so it's fun. So, who knows what the customer lifetime value is? Yeah? Well, I've got two hands, right? Either people.
I'm confused trying to work it out.
Right, okay. Alright, so let me talk to you about how you work it out. So I've got three hands as this entire group know what the customer lifetime value is. Is that because we don't think it's important?
I just don't think, I've done lots of work and consulted with lots of different businesses. I don't think businesses have ever been asked that question or ever looked at their customers in that way.
Wow. I mean, for me that's astonishing because I grew up in direct marketing, right? And so that was like one of the fundamental, very first things that we did. That was a few years ago now, in the 90s. Did you notice in that peak of the startup founders, what did you notice about that? There were two people had phones, right? That pic that I showed you, but there was only two people in the entire room had phones. Because there was nothing to do on the phone back then. You know, wireless WAP was a thing then, it was just starting, it was bloody awful. So customer lifetime value is one of those tricky things to work out, but it's actually not that hard. I'll give you a formula for working it out. So what you want to think about is, and there's a reason why you need to do this. So customer lifetime value is you think about, well, what is someone going to spend with me in a year? What does that look like over a period of time? What's that journey look like over a period of time? Because it's not necessarily going to be the same every year. You know, imagine if you're working with a client, there's going to be some foundational stuff, the workshops you run, you get them up to speed, you'll get them to a point, they'll then want to scale up, their spend will change, right? And then you might get to a point where you go, our marketing machine's working so well, we can actually turn the power of that down a bit and have that trickle and sustain really, really well, depending on what their goals are, right? So that will change over time. So you want to think about how much they're going to spend. You've got to then look at what's my margin in that. That's really important. So you then, and what that then enables you to do is you think very differently about what you will spend and what you will do to acquire a customer. That's why that is very important. If you look at a lifetime customer value and go, this customer could be worth 100 grand to me over a lifetime, am I going to pay for the coffee? You know, what am I going to invest in that relationship to drive that forward? Because it's actually worth a lot to keep that customer. And usually, someone who is a lifetime customer of yours will bring out at least one, if not 5, more customers to you. Really important. Second thing was brand, right? So, who's got a great brand? Has everybody had their coffee yet? Right, so brand is important too because it's that essence. It's not just about the logo or the pitch line or whatever, it's about that essence of what your company is. It's what you stand for and how that permeates everything you do and all the decisions you make. Right? The third thing, as you said, was that building the machine. And the machine is that part where you're looking for how does this operate without me? How does this work more effectively as we go? How do I build the engine so it's not dependent on me? One of the great guys that I had the privilege of doing some work with was Chris Tistron from Dinner Twist. And he and his partner, Mai, had a situation where they couldn't work full time in their business quite early on. And it changed their thinking about how they drove that business. They are a fantastic business. If you're not using Dinner Twist, if you're using HelloFresh or something else, throw that stuff in the bin, give Dinner Twist a go. Fantastic business that has been growing at such a phenomenal clip. I first met him when they were turning over about $1.5 million and they were doubling every year. So we just said, right, what's the target? 20 mil. I think last year they did about 16. So and COVID was brilliant for them. So do think about that kind of stuff. Now we all want unicorns. When we talk about scaling up, we all think about I want a unicorn for Christmas. Who's getting a unicorn? Right? How many unicorns have we had out of Western Australia? Canberra? 2, 3. A few. So we're doing all right. There's not hundreds of them. Okay, so for most people what they're doing is they're trying to build a solid business that is going to scale and be worth something over time. That isn't just a solopreneur business. Okay? There's nothing wrong if you want to be a solopreneur. There's nothing wrong with that. There's loads of people that go, that's the decision I want to make. I want the freedom. I don't want to have staff. I'm just going to be high value independent consultant, and it's absolutely fine. You just got to have a process to work your way through what that business is. Others will take a view that scaling up is more like 20% growth consistently. And that's not easy. If you've got a business that's turned over $3-4 million, getting 20% year-on-year growth is not an easy thing. I used to run a software development business for about 7 years, and that's what we were doing. We're doing around 20-25% growth year-on-year. And it's hard because you've got to keep selling, you've got to keep maintaining the existing sales that you're driving forward, you've got to find new staff, you've got to do all the delivery and so on. Like, it's a lot of work to be running at 20% growth when you start getting in the millions of dollars to keep driving that forward. So think about, you've really got to think about what it is that you're trying to drive for in growth, because sustaining that can be an interesting challenge. What do we think some of the pros and cons of driving at 20% growth every year is? And some people here will be going, look, 20% growth is not going to do it. We turned over $1,000 last year and $1,200 this year is not very exciting. Right?
Funding it, growing the operational engine in an efficient manner, chaos.
Yeah, that's perfect, because it's all of those growing pains and growing stresses. And the thing, I'm a business coach by background. I didn't mention that, but that's what I do. I find that when I'm working with owners, they're usually very, very smart people, horribly distracted. Right? So many things that they're trying to deal with, and so many decisions they're trying to make, and trying to move themselves forward. And they're not necessarily sure what it is the right thing that they should be working on. Does anybody feel like that? So what happens, what I really love doing is I like when people got a really clear vision on their business, they get really excited about it, they get very focused. When they limit the number of things that they're working on, they apply their energy in a consistent direction. And when they do that, they get momentum. Right? And then it gets really exciting. They start sending me emails, I've hit the sales target, I've smashed the numbers, we've done it early, put some new people on it. Like, that stuff is just, I find is so good. Anybody read Traction by Gino Wickman? Right, anybody read Scaling Up by Vern Harnish? So Gino used to work for Vern, stole a bunch of his IP, rebranded it, came out with Traction. I run the model I use. I'm part of a group called Mindshot. We start with our thinking around sustainable competitive advantage. Then we develop marketing strategy. Then we think about operations and how that informs. And then we come to innovation, people, and finance. The marketing strategy has got to be at the centre of it all, right? Because that drives everything. And I find too many businesses start off with, this is what we do. I just need to find more people that we can do that for. Not broken, not wrong, but it isn't necessarily the best way of doing it. And that's because a lot of people that start businesses are technically excellent. They're a technician in terms of the way they start, in terms of what they do. Does that make sense? Anybody felt a little bit of fatigue over the last 2 years? Right. So what's been going on, if we actually think about what normally happens in a crisis, if we think about bushfires or any earthquakes, think of earthquakes in New Zealand and bushfires that we had here in the eastern states and so on, you have this initial part where, pre-disaster, and maybe a warning, but there probably isn't. Then you have the impact. Then we see all the media stories about all the heroes. The koala getting a drink of water from the fiery, and all those kinds of great things, of people that do heroic deeds. And there's all that wonderful media stuff. You've got that sort of honeymoon of community cohesion. Then the TV crews disappear, and reality sets in. And then you start to see trigger events that begin to affect people's mental health. What's this got to do with us? Well, we've been through COVID, and it wasn't that long ago where we weren't sure if all of our businesses were going to go broke, and we weren't sure if we're all going to get sick, and people that we would know would die, right? It wasn't that long ago. And then since then, we've been on a roller coaster, and loads of the businesses I've been working with have found themselves in a situation where they've been working very, very hard because they were nervous about hiring staff, and now they're at a point where it's difficult to get staff, and it's still working very, very hard. So you just got this fatigue setting in. Why is this important? This is really, mental health is really important when you're running a startup. Right? It's very, very important to keep your mental health right so that you can actually keep driving forward. Who meditates? 3. Yoga, running. Right. What do you do to keep sane, Scott?
Oh, look, I have a workout routine. I walk the dog every day. I try and make sure my weekends are just for family and friends. I've got a few things that I.
What about you, Dave? What do you do? Nothing.
Polar opposite.
Polar opposite. You just want, give me more work.
Yeah, unfortunately. Yeah. And I kind of look at it and go, which day, when can I start to take, when can I get the business to a point where I can disconnect from it?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's a big thing, right? Because there's 24 hours a day, and then there's the nights, right? And then there's the weekends. So, you know, there's just, it's, where do you find that chance to stop?
You definitely do have to disconnect.
Yeah.
I find now, like a bit like Scott, I try not to do anything during the weekends, but that's very hard.
Yeah. Well, sometimes that's the beauty of public holidays, but beauty, I can actually catch up on some work.
Yeah.
Anybody feel like that? So, now one of the things for you to do post this, we won't do it now, is if you go to my website, you'll see where it says free resources up on the right. Down to the bottom right, you'll see a business scale-up diagnostic. This will take you about 5 minutes to do tops, and I'll give you some direct feedback straight in your email about those things that are most important to you. Top 3 areas where you're doing well, and 3 areas where you can focus on. It's really quick to do, and I'll give you some feedback in these top 10 areas in terms of where you focus. So please do emergination.com.au. Please go and look that up and go and do the diagnostics really quick for you to do. I don't see you've got your hands writing stuff. Scott, you'll get the link.
Sure.
The link
Yep.
out. So do have a look at that. So where's your growth going to come from over the coming 12 months? This is really important to think about in terms of focus. If you're struggling to focus, then the Pareto principle is the thing that you want to lean on. Think about the 20% of your products and services that provide 80% of the value. And 20% of your products and services will drive 80% of your loss. So I've just done this for a client of mine. They're an electrical contracting business. They're turning over nearly $1 million. And we actually ran through all of their clients, divided up by industry sectors that they're working in, and worked out average revenue of clients in each of those sectors. Right? Working in mining, industrial, commercial, and residential plus real estate. Now, what was really interesting out of that was all of the clients that are in this end are in the real estate market. Hard work, a lot of effort, lots of bills under $1,000, a real pain. Mining, by comparison, highest return, easiest work to do, most profitable, least price sensitive. It's easy, you're just going to get a ton more mining clients, right? It's not necessarily that easy. But the next sector, industrial and commercial, that does have the potential for it. Again, it's just understanding, looking at the focus. Now, I don't find many businesses that go and do this analysis. It is not hard. You can spit it out of zero, you can spit it out of whatever tools you're using. Then you run, it's an hour or two's worth of work to just get some good insights on what you should be focusing on in your sales. Okay, so it's really worth doing that particular work. So when you think about the product, who's got multiple products in their business? Yeah. So some of you may have seen this before. This is Boston Consulting Matrix, which is really looking at the products that are sitting in the mix in your business. And these are good things to go and talk with whoever your buddy's going to be when you go and have coffee after this, is to think about market attractiveness and business strength. So if you've got a really attractive market, but low business strength, you're kind of in this wildcat opportunity. That's where a lot of startups reside. An innovative product, but needs investment. Okay, so that kind of thing. The next segment is stars. Those ones have got really high growth potential, but there might be a low competitive advantage and a low profitability because you're driving that forward and you're still seeking your competitive advantage. Everybody wants a cash cow. That's where you've got something that is differentiated, it's high value, established, you've got some competitive advantage there, steady growth, and nobody wants a dog. Who's seen this before? So, I guess the question is, what quadrant's your biggest opportunity for profitable growth? Just yell it out. Right, Wildcat? Yeah. Anybody else? So, usually the star is the one, which is the one that's got the opportunity. What you're trying to do is you're trying to turn that into a cash cow. All of your focus, you're trying, how do I take a star product and get more competitive advantage, improve the profitability? What can I do to invest in the process so I'm actually driving the cost down? So one of the businesses I'm working with at the moment is a business called Ardia Waste. What they do, one of your, actually, on the podcast, so I was having coffee with Hayden before she popped over to Ammo to do that podcast. Awesome business. What they do is they help industrial customers to work out new opportunities to get rid of their commercial waste. They can take waste that's going 100% to landfill, in some cases repurpose 95% of it. It's really important business. The thing that we were doing yesterday was looking at how can we improve sales process to an extent that it actually drives efficiency, gets the cost of customer acquisition down so they can scale and grow much more quickly. Important stuff to do. So if you've got a star product you want to turn into a cash cow, go and grab a body afterwards and bounce some ideas around. That's one of the things that's fantastic about a group like this is you can leverage other people's ideas and expertise and bounce off each other and actually do it. So, what's the challenge of being a leader in this kind of market? It's this problem, right? You end up, if you're good and you're efficient, so many issues come back to you. So I was at a board meeting last night. There's a government agency at the moment which is dealing with a certain royal commission. 3 of the very senior leaders in that business have just resigned, and the next 4 senior people in that business are all on stress leave. I don't know who's driving the ship, but I mean, it creates a real interesting challenge, but it's around this. It's around that stress bit. We can't do more and more and more and more consistently. We've got to work out what we do less of. So we've got to be thinking about those things that we're doing. Who's got people in their team? Yeah. Who's planning to have people in their team? Yeah. Great. So this is an interesting book, Multipliers, and it talks about leadership and what that actually means. And what is interesting is that sometimes people don't realise that they're accidentally diminishing what other people in their business are doing. It's a good book to go and have a look at. I won't go into it a lot, but what's interesting about this is that sometimes people are well-intentioned, but they don't realise that they're diminishing their staff's capability. So, and I've done a few of these. So, for example, this idea of always on. The more I explain my thinking, the more people will get it. Well, I'm diminishing their thinking capability in this. One of my business partners on one of my projects before was the idea guy. My ideas were spark creative thinking. What we ended up with was a product development pipeline of about 4 or 5 years of work on a startup. Right? You just end up with tons and tons and tons of stuff. So, really what you want to be trying to do is not, we've all seen those diminishers in large organisations which are toxic people, right? The thing that we don't necessarily understand is when we're accidentally diminishing what people are doing. What we want to be doing is a multiplier. We want to work out how, through our people, we help them succeed and drive our organisation forward. So, what you should do, again, you can go and grab your coffee buddy after this and think about what are the things that you're doing, what are the things you want to start doing, what are the things you want to stop doing in, for this year and next. So do think about that. So when you do your diagnostic, you'll get a series of feedback directly around your gaps. The ones in red are the ones that we typically see are the challenges. Who's got a cash flow statement? Right, usually it's pretty rare in most of the business I'm dealing with. Sometimes people have got a strategy kind of very loose, but it's not documented and the team doesn't understand it. Sometimes leadership, whether you call it leadership or vision, what you're doing around that it can be a little bit weak. And people don't understand change. And change readiness is another thing that's to work through. So when you do your diagnostic, this is what you'll get back. You'll get some feedback of those things that are green, which are things you're doing well, those things that are red, which are areas to focus. And when you get this back, if you want any help around this, please do call me and catch up, sit down over coffee, and I'm happy to run through and help in any way that I can. One of the key things that I'll do just before I go to wrap up is think about competitor analysis. One of the things that I find most businesses don't do is they don't really understand the competitors. I sat down with an electrical contracting business and they said to me, we are not winning any work, we are struggling. I said, right, well, what's going on with your competitors? What are your customers buying on? They said, it's all about price. I said, rubbish, can't be all about price. I said, well, it's 90% price. I said, okay, well, how do you compete on price then? Oh, okay. Well, so let's pull it apart a little bit. Let's work out what are the criteria are that people are buying your service on. Is it quality of service, is it capabilities of background, and so on. What we discovered was that they had a competitive disadvantage in every decision criteria that they were working on. What does that mean? It's an acceleration go broke. So we looked and said, look, you've got to go to a different segment. If you go to another segment where you've got a competitive advantage, what can you do? They had another segment that they could work in where price wasn't as important. Their capability was different in the way they went, and that's the area of focus. This is a great exercise to do, and the way that you do this is you think about the factors that are important for your clients in making a decision towards your product. Most people won't do this. Right? Most people go, I'll run some more ads, you know, I'll fill around with value proposition, I'll do a new website, but they don't really dive into what's important around the decision criteria for why people buy. Because this actually gives you competitive advantage and makes you different. So in this particular case, a small residential builder, value for money, quality of design, brand reputation, on-time delivery were the important things. And then the aim is to work out what is the weight of each of those adding up to 100. Like doing tenders. What you then do is you then say, okay, where do we sit? And we take the midpoint of that. And the purpose of taking the midpoint is it makes comparison easy. So if you look at your competitors, you score them on the same scale. And then you start to think about, well, what is it that we can do that improves our position in each of those? And you look at coming up with different ideas. So changing the value for money point of view could be things like special offers or delayed payment or so on. And then looking at those different ideas that then give you incremental points in each of those facets around what it is that our customers are making decisions on in terms of how they buy. This is meaningful stuff that gives you a competitive difference, and ads by themselves won't do it. Like if you're working with a great agency, you've got to give them good ammo, unintended, to work with, right? So think about those sorts of things. So really, if you want this, you'll pop something on LinkedIn or whatever. Just hit me up through that, and I'll send you the template so you can fill it out. And again, if you need any help with it, just let me know. I'm happy to run through it with you. So I want you to think about, through all of that stuff that we've covered pretty quickly, what are the top 3 things that you're going to do over the next 90 days to make a meaningful difference? There's a diagnostic to run through which will help pinpoint what you're looking for. There's that competitive advantage to run through, sitting down with a buddy and coming up with some ideas around what you might do there. So, in terms of bringing that together, now's really the right time to thrive. We've got a great opportunity, the market's moving, property's moving, money in the economy. There's never been so much stimulus in the economy. Right? I think we all agree with that. The Boston Consulting Matrix that we ran through there can give you some insights about what you should do around your products. So take a look at that. We're trying to drive cash cows in our business and trying to build new stars. You know, delegation's a critical skill as a leader. And that accidental diminishes book is really interesting because it sometimes gives you some insights into what it is that you might be doing that is not getting your team to quite work in the way that you want them to work. And really take a look at that diagnostic work and what the top areas that you need to focus on and think about how you're going to be number one in 2021. So, what was the key insight for you out of all of that? What things came out for you? Scott, I'm going to pick on you first. Because
Jesus, there's so much stuff. I'm just trying to apply all of that to my current business. Yeah, probably. Can you rewind a few slides?
I think the competitive, like if you did nothing else, would you like competitor analysis?
Accidental diminishes was for me. If you don't have competitors, how do you evaluate the buying decision or look for improvements in that?
Yeah, that's
So you just say, if you don't have competitors, you have competitors, you just haven't identified them.
You've got substitutes, right?
Yeah,
so,
substitutes.
So usually, the thing that I've always, when people are doing a lean canvas, the one thing they never put down on the lean canvas as a competitor is do nothing. And that is the biggest competitor always. Inertia, status quo is your biggest competitor. And so one of the big challenges when you've got a startup product is you're turning up with somebody and they don't have the valuation criteria that you're used to buying, right? So you're coming up with something new. They don't even know who in the organisation really is responsible for buying this. They don't have budgets for that. So you're then trying to work out, well, what is it they might do? So tell me what you're...
It's online pre-start selections for house builders.
Okay. So, what do I do if I'm not using your product?
You can sell and give them a physical brochure.
Right.
And they produce.
Okay. So I'd be thinking about, well, am I going to get a better outcome? Does this help me get a better outcome using the product? Do I save time? Do I save money? You know, if you think about, you know, they don't necessarily have a competitive thing to compare against. But if you're looking at, they're going to have some decision criteria. How do I work this out? So again, that will help you think about if these are the things that people are using to make a decision on this or nothing. What can I do to improve in each of those areas and use it as a starting point? Yeah, I can sit down and chat more if you want. So I think there's lots of good things there. Do use that diagnostic. It's free. It takes 5 minutes, and I'm happy to catch up with you afterwards and chat it through. Should you wish, it'll help focus on what you want to do. I've got some. I run a business growth hub with all of my clients once a quarter. It's a face-to-face event. The thing that's fantastic about it is everybody's bouncing off each other in terms of working through issues in the business, and there's a lot of trust and some people actually doing business together, which is terrific. There's webinars and all sorts of things that I'm running, so please do take a look at that. And I'm always delighted to catch up for a coffee. Thank you guys for the opportunity to speak.
Pleasure.
And be here this morning. It's wonderful being a part of it.
Thanks, Justin. So, you guys got any questions for Justin before we wrap this up?
Yeah.
So you mentioned that the scale of the business has about 20% growth. And so if you're an investor, and I guess it depends on if you're like early stage or
Yeah.
are they looking at 20% as a figure to invest in?
Oh yeah, really good question. So I did an investment pitch on Friday for $500,000, and they look like they want to put in more like 2, which creates a different problem for us. But our growth is, at the moment, we're 0, so 20% on 0 is not very attractive. We're sort of expecting more rocket ship kind of growth. Most people that are running a business, if they can do 20% year on year on year, they will do extraordinarily well. So it depends on the nature of your business. If you're a software startup, and that's what you're doing, trying to build that kind of a scalable business, and 20% is not the right number. But for a lot of people that start a business, whether it's a consulting business or any other kind of business, if they can achieve 20% year on year growth, they will build something that's very exciting for themselves in 3 to 5 years' time. It just obviously depends on the starting number as to what's right. But it's a good question because you've got to work out what's the right growth rate for you.
Anything else? Nothing?
Is there on your website like material they can pull down? Also, you got the
There's tons of stuff. So if you just go to the free resources, there's blog posts, videos, podcasts, there's 16 different diagnostic tools, there's loads of stuff and some videos. And
How do you break that paradigm between the time and money?
yeah, really, that's a great question. So when you come to pricing, pricing's a whole strategy in itself. So some people, what they do is they do cost plus. They work out what their costs are, they then add a margin and work it out that way. Some people, what they do is they look at what their competitors are doing and they just go, this is what my competitor charges, that's what I'm going to charge. And you need to do all of these. And the third one, which is the one that you really want to be doing, is value-driven pricing. Right? If you get to value creation, you have different conversations. So as a business coach, if I'm talking to somebody, I'll run a quick spreadsheet summary and go, right, if we were to do this with your sales, do this with your costs, this is the kind of money that you get out, is that worth going for? If my fee was 1/10 of that or 1/5 of that, you'd be pretty happy because you're getting 5 times multiple. Like it takes the price out of the equation. So if you look at Power BI, the thing that everybody talks about with big data and dashboards and that kind of stuff is what are the insights that come out of it. It's very difficult for you to be able to say to somebody, you're going to get this insight which is going to give this return. What you can do though is you can take loads of examples from other clients and go, we did this, they found that, they got this back. My fee was this, their return was, and in large organisations that you'd be typically working with, the multipliers would be huge. But even in small ones, metrics are so critical for any startup in terms of driving what it is that you're doing and knowing the right things to measure. And usually, we all talk about managing metrics and not looking at that stuff. But if you know what the right KPIs are and you're tracking that, you're going to have really good conversations and really focus on the key things that matter, usually 3 in business. So.
I also think it's a journey. Like when you first start out, you were always too cheap. And as you start going, like when are we still recording?
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Bring it on.
we were like X price and now we're 100x that. It comes back to that value because we were like, we realised the value that you're adding to it and then when you get the experience, you go, okay, we put this in, we were very cheap because we got the customers, we got some flagship customers, but then 10 projects down the line and go, right, actually I know the value of what I'm proposing, so therefore I can charge you, all of a sudden I'm not charging you a 5-figure license fee, I'm charging you a 6-figure license fee. Again, that just comes from just time. I don't think there's any fast way to it, unfortunately.
Finding the customer's willingness to pay, there's a whole strategy
you get
around
as you
that.
start to go, like you said, literally you go, I've done these 10 projects, I know that from this as an average value, you're going to get this return from it. And also, if you can then start to define that there's nothing else coming back to that competitive advantage, there's nothing else in the marketplace in the price of car.
It's usually about confidence, right? So when you've got that experience, as you say, Dave, the way that you come in and you talk with people is that your expectation changes. I've got loads of customers, they're all paying this amount of money. Like if you want to get what they're getting, just jump on, it completely changes the mindset. And so many of the people I'm working with, the first thing I've got to fix with them is their sales and how they approach, usually because they've been mucked around by car salesmen at some point. And so they define all of their sales process based on not wanting to be that. And if they do that, so what I get them to do is get them to do that competitive analysis, and then I get, right, how do we be best in market? And if you're best in market, and somebody buys something else other than your service, aren't you doing them a disservice? Aren't you really not looking after them? So isn't it your obligation that they buy your product and not somebody else's? And it's just that simple mind shift change that is absolutely critical.
Love it.
Yeah. If you want to catch up with me, you can just go to my website. There's a Calendly link on there. You can just book an appointment.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Justin.